So I've seen a number of articles on this new social media app called Clubhouse. This passage here is in The Hill. Clubhouse, an emerging social media platform born during the coronavirus lockdowns, has given users a chance to connect through intimate audio conversations with virtual strangers even while isolated at home. But as the platform continues to grow, the same model that has allowed users to connect while physically apart is raising concerns about how the app will handle the spread of misinformation. Unlike traditional social media platforms where a user's footprint is more permanent, Clubhouse chat room conversations are not recorded by the app, making it essentially impossible to discern the spread of false information or harassment. Emerson Brooking, resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab, told The Hill, quote, "Because your words don't follow you the same way they do with a Twitter account, you do feel more relaxed, and that means the app is working as intended. But of course, it means it also poses particular dangers." Okay, so here's why we're talking about this. I've seen a bunch of articles now that basically make the argument we need to police social media more, censor more, deplatform more, filter more, have more rules, have more enforcement. There's been a number of hearings in Congress on this exact issue. And so now the new hot social media app, Clubhouse, I guess the best way to describe it is almost like a Twitter for audio. But it's not really like Twitter because, again, there's no log of it. And, like, you're invited into these groups and you could talk to people and it just, it goes away into the ether, whatever you're saying. But one of the things they go on to bring up is, like, the anti-vax people are, like, thriving on this app. And the whole tone of it and feel of it is like, we need to do something. There's too much misinformation. This has too much of a negative impact. We got to act. And my question is always the same with these articles and these arguments. Who gets to decide stuff? And it's mighty convenient that it's always like the legacy media outlets, like the New York Times or CNN. Like, they're the ones who always come up with these arguments and push them relentlessly. Why? They have the most to gain. Because these big social media companies, if they actually start enforcing the rules that they're being prodded to enforce, they would rely on outlets like the New York Times or CNN to be the fact checkers. And so they have a conflict of interest in the discussion because no matter what, they're the ones who get to call the shots and be the ministry of truth. And by the way, that's one of the main problems with this whole argument is they get stuff wrong all the time. All the time they get stuff wrong. CNN was one of the worst offenders when it came to Russiagate. The New York Times, virtually every mainstream media outlet helped do the propaganda that led us to the illegal and offensive war in Iraq. That alone should let you know this is not... There can be no ministry of truth because nobody gets it right all the time. You could try to get it right all the time. You're not going to get it right all the time. And I guarantee you, the only people who actually feel the brunt of censorship and deplatforming, it's always people who aren't powerful. And in some cases you could say, yeah, it's really a conspiracy theory. The anti-vax stuff, truly a conspiracy. The stop the steal stuff, truly a conspiracy. But of course this shit is going to impact the left as well as the right. It always works like that. If you talked in 2016 about how the DNC rigged it against Bernie, you would be correct based on the WikiLeaks. But the powers that be did not agree with that narrative, and they would have tried to pull your stuff down if you were making that argument. It's true. If you brought up Syria and the gas attack and you were skeptical, which you should have been because now whistleblowers have proven that, in fact, the skeptical people were correct. They would have went after you if you were correct at the time. So you have to understand the same mindset that gets people to pull down, far-right Twitter accounts is the same mindset that gets the Antifa Twitter accounts pulled down. It's going to affect anybody who's not in power. And so here you have a situation where mainstream media is begging for more censorship and more deplatforming and more authoritarian controls on these social media apps. And it's like, whatever they're calling for creates bigger problems than it solves. Because I don't trust the New York Times or CNN, and I don't trust the government to, accurately determine what's true and what's not true and what's allowed and what's not allowed. I would much rather have a system with freedom and some misinformation being spread around than authoritarianism and still misinformation is being spread around, but it's just the officially approved establishment misinformation. So it's really, as a matter of principle, you should lean more on the side of freedom. And we all get it. You can't do direct threats of violence, of course. You can't abuse somebody, of course. But to censor based on the content is never okay. You can't censor based on the content, and that's what people are calling for. Stop the spread of misinformation. You can make the argument that okay, forget the social media apps. What if you have a bunch of people just meeting in person? After COVID, everybody's meeting in person. You have these little clubhouse gatherings, and people are talking to each other. You could argue that any gathering of people, the spread of misinformation can be rampant. Does that mean we should ban the gathering of people or ban certain people from showing up? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's incredibly authoritarian. And now you have a situation where mainstream media, this is what they call for on a regular basis, and the government is, and the tech companies are sort of now being prodded in that direction. They're leaning in that direction, and it's terrifying because this is going to create more problems than it's going to solve, and it's by definition authoritarian. So honestly, I don't even use Clubhouse, but hands off fucking Clubhouse and hands off all the social media outlets, because you want them to do something they're not equipped or capable to do, and you want to create a ministry of truth which will never work. It'll never work, and it's wrong in principle.